Okay, hello everyone. My name is Tanjit Nagra, and I get the pleasure to get us started today. So thanks to those who have tuned in and to those who are going to be joining shortly, and also to those who are going to watch the recording later. So before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that myself, as well as most, if not all, of our speakers today are located on Treaty 1 land, and these are the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. The University of Manitoba has over 140,000 alumni across 140 countries. So wherever you're tuning in from, thank you. And I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the lands in which you're located on and acknowledge any harms or mistakes of the past and how you, me, all of us can dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation, collaboration, and partnership. So I'm sure many of you know that there is a Board of Governors election happening amongst our U of M alumni community, and not only do the candidates have to be creative, trying to engage over 140,000 plus alumni across the globe, but add on a global pandemic, so really have to think outside the box. So this is one of the ways that we're trying to help. Myself and some friends here are trying to help out Dr. Duane Brothers, who's a candidate in the election, and voting is open until this May 14th, this Friday, up until 4 p.m. Central Time, so Winnipeg time. So please make sure you get your vote in if you haven't already. If you have family or friends who are alumni, please make sure that you ask them to also kindly cast their vote for Duane. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Duane Brothers. I first met Duane when I was a senior at Glenlawn Collegiate, and he was the superintendent starting at Louisville School Division. I won't say the years, so I'll avoid aging both of us at this point. But since then, I've just seen the incredible leadership Duane has brought to our community, not only amongst the education system, but currently he serves as the chair of the Special Olympics in Manitoba, and he does so much tremendous work in regards to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think, as a former Board of Governors member and as a former member and a representative for students at the University of Manitoba, I think he'd be a great addition to the Board of Governors. So I encourage you to support him. Without further ado, I'll pass things over to Dr. Duane Brothers. Hopefully your next representative on the University of Manitoba Board of Governors.
Based on what you just said, I think I should step aside, Tanji, and let you run instead of me. My goodness. Well, thank you very much. We got a really esteemed group of people, my friends, who are going to be able to speak today. First of all, let me just say what the Board of Governors is all about. It is the corporate governing body of the University of Manitoba that oversees all administrative and business affairs of the university. Works closely with the University of Manitoba Senate, the provincial government, and other partners. I thought about this a lot with Tanjit over the last couple of weeks, what we would do here today. And rather than just having me speak towards everybody, I thought if I am a potential member of the Board of Governors, what's important to me is hearing from what some of our esteemed members or alumni of the University of Manitoba have to say about the direction of the University of Manitoba. So that's why I'm going to ask a series of questions. And they're going to be based on the current strategic plan of the University of Manitoba. And if I could summarize them very briefly. Number one, pushing theory into practice. The University of Manitoba is a university where there's lots of research happening, obviously. But it's not enough just to do research and write papers. It's even more important to push theory into practice in what we're doing to move forward our society. The second point is driving discovery to address social issues, okay? So we need to be curious in all of our different faculties, and not just curious for curiosity's sake, but to say, okay, how can we deal with some of the major issues that are affecting our society, whether it's in the sciences, the humanities, or what have you. Three, a major push here in the province of Manitoba is we are to provide excellence in Indigenous education and research. And finally, building community with regards to our alumni, and as Tanjit said, over 140,000 people around the planet Earth, our partners in the community and the business sectors, as well as to make sure that we're exchanging a wide range of different ideas as we push forward as a university. Each one of our members here are alumni of the University of Manitoba, and each one of them are pushing forward in their different areas of expertise, and it's just great. Our first speaker is going to be Rebecca Chartrand. Rebecca, I'm reminded that we co-presented 8 years ago on related to Black and Indigenous perspectives on colonialism. Rebecca is the Vice President of Programs and Student Success with Inspire, an Indigenous national charity that invests in the education of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And she is formerly the division principal and anti-racism lead in the Seven Oaks School Division in Winnipeg. Rebecca is Anishinaabe, Inuit, and Métis from Pine Creek First Nations on Treaty 4 territory. Rebecca, my question for you is this. As a leader in the Indigenous community and an advocate for anti-racist work, is Indigenous research and education an end game, or is there more that is required for placing indigenization into the center of Canadian life, and specifically into University of Manitoba life?
Hi. Okay. Well, thank you, Duane, and thank you for that introduction. And it's a real pleasure to just be with everybody on this panel today. I am a proud University of Manitoba alumni. I completed both my B.Ed and my master's degree there as well. And I had the privilege of working with Duane in Seven Oaks School Division when he was the superintendent there. And so Duane was, always focused on, bringing innovative and important issues to the table, such as those that he just mentioned. I think I want to just first acknowledge the great work that the University of Manitoba has already done in terms of addressing issues around truth and reconciliation. We know that, from my own understanding of the work that's been carried out at the U of M, there's already been the blueprint for the future, which really focused on bringing an institution-wide commitment to addressing, Indigenous achievement and issues around reconciliation. I also want to acknowledge that the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation is also located at the University of Manitoba, which I think is a huge win. Not only, are we a central location within Canada, but I think it speaks volumes about the work that's been carried out at the University of Manitoba. I think some of the things that are really important right now for Indigenous people and people across this country is this era of racial reckoning that we're in right now. I think people are able to speak in ways that we haven't been able to speak before. So by people, I mean, Indigenous, Black, people of color. And I think people are much more receptive today than they ever have been before. So there's definitely a huge opportunity to push the envelope and to see how far we can move the needle. And if I look at it from a very Indigenous centric lens, I think it's important to recognize that the work around truth and reconciliation is still very important. We know that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission itself put out its report in 2016 with its 94 calls to action. And since then, we've seen, the federal government has maybe been able to address 10 of those 94 calls to action. And so I think it's important as a university to recognize that there are a fair amount of calls to action that are commitments to education in of itself, but there's also a huge amount that commit to areas that are important to an anti-racism and social justice lens. And so I think that's where there is a huge intersection between the work that we carry out under that much broader banner. So I think moving forward, for me as an Indigenous person, it's important, to take stock of the things that we're doing now and to continue building on those important things that are going to continue to have impact. One of the things that I would love to see across this country is to collect some of the enrollment, the graduation and employment data for Indigenous peoples Because when we look at statistics across the country, we know that Indigenous people are enrolling more within, colleges and universities across the country. They're graduating more, but we're not seeing employment increasing at the same level. And at this point, we don't have enough consolidated data to support that. But I think what we see is very anecdotal. I know that that's some of the research that we're looking to lean into as a national organization, because the work that we do at Inspire is really about enhancing Indigenous achievement. So working with post-secondary institutes as major partners in achieving that agenda. So I think that's where the University of Manitoba can lead, is just really digging into the research that's really informed and led by Indigenous peoples, so that we, when we're looking at things in terms of accountability and transparency, that we're able to, measure success, and that, success is determined, by Indigenous peoples in moving those markers along. And I just want to say thank you again, Duane, and you have my vote, and I'm a big supporter in the work that you've done, and I completely acknowledge the impact that you've had in places like Seven Oaks School Division, where we first met. So thank you for inviting me to this panel today.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I think it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
My memory's going a little, one of the best HR decisions I made was recruiting you to Seven Oaks, and
That's correct. You did.
your career so far, it's just been absolutely fantastic. When I think about the pillars of the strategic plan, you've talked about a couple of things there. Number one, pushing theory into practice. And you talked about, okay, it's not about just making sure that Indigenous people are getting educated, but what's happening after they finish at the University of Manitoba. And the third one was about how we provide excellence in Indigenous education and research. And so thank you very much. My second question to you, Rebecca, is this. What was your best memory of your time at the University of Manitoba?
I think my best memory was working with Barbara, my master's, my thesis advisor. Dr. Barbara Miller. I really enjoyed my time with her because as a non-Indigenous person, we were digging into an area that wasn't fully formed yet in terms of Indigenous research methodologies. So I think it was an interesting time, and we were just starting to see literature that was being produced around Indigenous research methodologies. So some of the Smith's work was just emerging. Margaret Kovacs' work was just emerging. So it really created an opportunity for us to really dig deep and to understand where we were coming from. And I appreciated the fact that she was willing to walk alongside me and support that journey, because as we know, writing your master's or engaging in master's work it can be sometimes, trying to figure your way through the dark, because there's certain norms and practices that are in place that really are a part of our institutions. And so I think, in looking at different ways of teaching, learning, leading, and knowing, we came to a better understanding of, the value of Indigenous epistemology, ontology, pedagogy. And I think that also was a huge reinforcement of the type of learning that occurred for me over the years that was outside of educational institutions. So I think that was important for me, especially because most of the work that I've done over the years has been under the umbrella of Indigenous education. And so really helping people understand, the pedagogical value that come from, and that continue to exist within the cultural life ways of Indigenous peoples was really important. And so for that, I think I'm forever grateful. And I think it has in some part contributed, to some of the things that we've seen evolve, in the name of Indigenous education throughout this province, is just, that experimentative stage where you're trying things, you're implementing it, and then of course, seeing if it has impact.
Oh, thank you very much, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. My second question goes to Paul Soubry. a guy I played university basketball back in the 80s. I know him as Junior. A lot of people may not know him as this, but Paul Soubry is the president and CEO of NFI Group, a leading provider of bus and motor coaches. The company has over 8,000 team members and sales of over $3 billion US. This is a University of Manitoba graduate. Prior to joining NFI, Paul worked for 24 years with Standard Aero, one of the world's largest independent aerospace maintenance companies. Paul has a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Manitoba, and he's also attended the Executive Development Program at the Harvard Business School. Paul sits on the board of directors of NFI Group, the Winnipeg Jets Hockey Group / True North Sports and Entertainment, and the Wawanesa Mutual Insurance Company. Paul, if there was a 3-point line when we played together back in the day, you would have had a lot more points, man. You could really the ball. I encourage everybody who's watching this presentation to check out Paul on Wikipedia, and you'll see further evidence of Paul's incredible excellence and his achievements, and he continues to do wonderful things for our community. So Paul, I have a question for you, and it's got a couple of moving pieces to it. I've been thinking about the U of M's Front and Center campaign that you led, and it raised over $650 million for the university. Paul, you're a busy guy. Why did you take on this endeavor? And as an alumni and a community and business leader, and as a guy who has been a continuous learner since you've left the university, how has the U of M and further connections with the business community, many of whom might become new partners of the university, helped you become who you are, Paul?
Well, thanks, Duane. And I echo Rebecca's comments about my father chaired the board of governors at U of M for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so had a really cool opportunity to see front and center, no pun intended, how the university works and what an important impact it has on our province and our future. The front and center capital campaign, as we all know, capital campaigns for those kinds of institutions happen, a couple times every decade. And when this one was kicked off, I was given the opportunity to be involved, and lots of things come to your mind really quickly. You and I and the rest of us are grads of the U of M, and so there's an element of, boy, I wouldn't be where I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had that grassroots education and exposure. And so there's an element of give back that really a great opportunity. The second thing that is, I think in my mind was really pivotal is that it wasn't one issue. It wasn't about building a building somewhere. It was fundamentally to set up the next chapter of life for the university. And you quickly introduced with a number of the strategic priorities of the strategic plan. But when I think about the main pillars of the campaign, whether it's graduate research or places and spaces or Indigenous education or research and so forth, you start to really understand the depth, the exposure, the size, and the impact of the University of Manitoba. You comment there's 140,000 grads. 65,000 of those people actually gave back to front and center, 15% of which were the first time they reached back to the university since they graduated. And so what I was given the opportunity to do, and what you want to do as a member of the Board of Governors, is fundamentally chart the future, set the stage, turn actions and ideas, or turn plans and ideas into actions. And so I was really, really thrilled to be able to do that and to be part of such a really successful campaign. And when we first had an announcement, we were going to try and hit $500 million. And of course, after many of us started breathing again, that's an awful lot of money. There is something really special about U of M and its graduates. There's an element of we can punch above our weight and we can do this. And when you start to get deeper, as you will, and all of us have seen, whether it's the Indigenous dynamic that Rebecca talked about, or whether it's the research that's done on things going on all over the world, or whether it's the business community, and you look at the number of grads or engineers and so forth, this ability to actually influence or be part of something that is way bigger than us as individuals and way bigger than today. It's about the 140,000 before us, and it's about the next chapter. Boy, was that ever a cool opportunity. So in terms of, what U of M did for me, and you joked about it, but it's 40 years ago when you and I were going to the Bison East Gym trying to figure out how to beat the Westmen across the city. I lived in a pretty privileged little world. Not that my folks had zillions of dollars, but I lived in a fairly defined little world. When I walked into the U of M and when you and I became friends, previous to that, we were competitors in high school. The aperture of my perspective got real broad real quick. Things I really had no exposure to, the Indigenous culture, your background and the Black element of our community, the Asian dynamic that is a big part of the Winnipeg fabric, and so on and so forth. It was like a kid getting his eyes wide open. And so I think that's been my biggest learning as I've moved through my career and trying to lead people at different businesses and sizes of organizations, in that, you know, the university is a team sport. And while you'll be a key member of the Board of Governors, the real trick is to work with the board and the administration to progress the agenda and make things happen. And somebody like you that has not only been a learner, an educator, a leader, but also a team player is a critical part of the success of that. And I think that's something, whether, you know, you and I were playing basketball or whether I learned it in my classroom, but that element of being a team player and trying to help move the agenda as one member of that thing is so critical. And different people need to take leadership at different times. And so I think that's really what's opened my eyes, is this exposure to the world is much bigger than myself. And if I can be part of that success, boy, am I ever lucky to be able to do so.
Wow. Paul, again, I come back to the strategic plan, and you touched on a number of things, theory into practice, and you've exemplified that, right? You did your degree, but as I read your resume, you've continued to be a learner, and you haven't stopped. You know, we don't just get a degree, we keep going. You're a partner as a business person, coming back to the university, engaging with the university, and being a part of that larger community. You talked and you touched base on your growth and my growth around learning about the world that's bigger than us, with Indigenous communities, people of color. But you also really hit, and you've exemplified this whole idea of community. Alumni, partners, exchanging ideas. And I love what you just said about, you know, punching above our weight. You know, one of the things in the vision of the University of Manitoba is to take our place amongst the leading educational organizations, not only in Canada, but around the world. And there's no reason why we can't do that if we have that vision and we start doing the heavy lifting to get things done. Paul, my last question for you: what is your favorite memory of the University of Manitoba?
Well, you know, I think it's that circle of friends. Like you and I are friends, it's 40 years later. And, you know, hopefully in my life, I opened your eyes to things, but you opened up my eyes to a lot of stuff. And, you know, we used to call it the Rock, but sitting in UMSU with our silly white basketball jackets, thinking we were, you know, cooler than everybody else. But the friendships, the exposure to the, you know, the United Nations, U of M's United Nations, right? There's every size, shape, or color in there. And it's the understanding and acceptance and working together for that bigger purpose. And, you know, I look at our friends on the panel today, and yourself included, and you knew my father well. You know, he was an immigrant to this country at 18, and his comment and his thing sticks with me today, is that we got to give back more than we take. And I'm really grateful to what I got from the U of M, not only an education and a degree, but, you know, friendships, and quite honestly, the awareness of the world and its all its wonderful success and all of its challenges we deal with. And to me, I got that at U of M.
Wow. Paul, my last aside to you, again, you're just spurring so many memories. You know, I remember when my parents moved to Vancouver, and I was living with my sister in an apartment, and the Soubrys would welcome me to Sunday dinners. And I certainly remember that very well, and how welcoming you and your entire family were to me. It was a tremendous blessing to me. So thank you very much, Junior.
Well, very kind, Duane, and I really hope this goes through for you, because I think you'd be a tremendous contributor to the board and to the future of the university.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next person I have to talk to is Markus Chambers, who I've known for another 40 years or so. Markus is the city councillor for the ward of St. Norbert, Seine River. Prior to seeking public office, Markus spent 29 years as a civil servant managing the provincial nominee program, which brought skilled workers and business investment to Manitoba. Markus has sat on the board of trustees for the United Way, on the capital campaign of the Friends of the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, the Henteloof Park Foundation, the St. Boniface Hospital Research Foundation, raising money and awareness for heart health for the Caribbean community. Markus is a former deputy mayor of the city of Winnipeg, and he serves as the chairperson of the Winnipeg Police Board and remains as the vice chair of the Human Rights Committee of Council. Markus, I don't know how you do all this, but you get things done. And again, I remind, as we mentioned before we went live here, is that Markus and Paul probably are on the dance floor at the Marble Club 40 years ago, for those of us who are old enough to remember that. But Markus, I have first of all, amazing background, and you continue to do incredible work. Whenever I'm online, I see you in every community in Winnipeg, Indigenous communities, Indo-Canadian communities, you're everywhere, and your service has just been unbelievable, and it continues. I have a question for you, Markus. We have talked about equity, we've talked about diversity, we've talked about inclusion and international education. And again, within line with the strategic plan of the University of Manitoba, again, theory into practice, addressing social issues, building community. What does academic and cultural excellence look like for you at the University of Manitoba? Academic and cultural excellence.
Well, great question, and thank you very much. I'm, so excited, as I said, to be part of this panel. And just listening to Rebecca and to Paul, there's so many things there that I could unpack and start talking about, and just recognizing their experiences through the University of Manitoba that are similar to mine in terms of the experiences that I've had and been able to grow from. But reflecting back and looking at when I entered university back in the early 80s, the university itself was not as diverse a space as we see it now. I attended from 1982 to 1987, and then had the opportunity to return to the university in 2016 to complete the public sector management program that was offered through the province of Manitoba. Of course, when I got back in 2016, it was a completely different looking university in the sense of the diversity that was there, just the atmosphere in being a much more welcoming space for people of diverse backgrounds. You mentioned that I spent 29 years with the province, and just to clarify, the last 17 years with the provincial nominee program, recruiting skilled workers and business investment. The last 2 years of my career, we also focused on the international student movement and bringing international students to the University of Manitoba and increasing that portfolio. Of course, international students bring a unique experience. There's a ton of benefits that the university does benefit from in terms of increasing cultural diversity. It's important, though, that we, as a university, ensure that there are not only professors, but teaching assistants that are able to, have that lived experience, being of diverse backgrounds. And it's the international students, and I would say national students as well, that are coming from other areas of our country, our Indigenous population, and making sure that there is that representation in terms of the academia that's there, those that are teaching, those that are teachers' assistants, and making sure that students have access to them. That's an important part of it. Increasing orientation for our international students to make sure that they feel very comfortable in their learning environment and feel welcome in that learning environment as well. We need to, as a university, have more collaboration with our newcomer agencies and organizations to inspire different ways of learning and different opportunities for learning for our international students, because that's how we're going to retain them here in our communities. Of course, the value that they bring is that their unique perspective, coming from a high school that was not in this country, but perhaps learning not only about how we do things here in Canada, but how we learn to learn here in Canada as well. So those are the things that international students will bring in terms of that perspective. We need to support them. They're so far away from home, and we have to remember, a lot of them are very young. And you know, I remember my experience in graduating high school, and I think the scariest day for me is now what? You know, I'm not really expected to be anywhere, and how does that impact the rest of my life? I knew because of my older brothers and sisters that, you know, post-secondary education was going to be something I was going to be committed to in terms of finding my way and my opportunities in life. But these international students that are leaving half a world away need to be supported so that they can feel at home here and have a better space, a stronger space for learning, and then perhaps staying here and providing to our economic growth and our cultural vibrancy of this province. So that's it in a nutshell for me. I want to make sure, and since I've been here at City Hall, I've been the EDI guy, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and wanting to make sure that all aspects of our city government are accessible and inclusive to all members of our city, whether that's cultural background, whether it's accessibility and making sure that our streets and our city are designed for people with accessibility and mobility issues. These are the things that I think the university can weigh in on as well and enhance our living standards here in the city and throughout our province.
Wow, Markus, you touched on all four of the pillars of the strategic plan. You know, you exemplify having a university education, but pushing theory into practice. You know, in the city of Winnipeg, you've talked about the focus on societal issues. You've talked about Indigenous and people of color in our international education community. But also you've talked about building community, and you're exemplifying that by being part of this conversation today. My last question to you, Markus, is again, as I've asked the other folks, is your best memories of the University of Manitoba.
Well, my best memory is probably not an academic moment. And Duane, you might remember this as well. It was that day that we rented out the Max Bell Arena, and it was 20 black guys skating, playing hockey at Max Bell Arena.
I remember that.
And we attracted people who looked confused, you know, because and this was back in the day when we weren't required to wear face masks and be as protective as we are now. But people just came and looked, and it was like, but they're all black. And it was truly, you know, I kind of looked around and saw people coming in, and one person in particular was at the door pointing to the ice surface and telling his friend to come and witness this. But it was truly a day for us to do something uniquely Canadian and kind of shift the paradigm in terms of that sport. And I remember it fondly, and just having the opportunity to connect with the guys in the dressing room afterward, it was a great moment for University of Manitoba sport.
Hey, Markus, I think it was me at the door, actually. I think that was me.
Markus, did you score in that game?
I think I did once or twice.
Amazing how our memories change over time. Well, thank you very much, Markus. We have one more speaker, and that is my good friend, Tanjit Nagra. I remember Tanjit as a graduate at Glen Lawn Collegiate when I was superintendent. And I was amazed at how accomplished she was, how well she spoke, and just how sharp she was. And she continues to be. I'm blown away by Tanji. Tanji completed her Asper MBA program in 2021, this past year. And she was president of UMZU. serving as a spokesperson for over 20,000 students at the University of Manitoba, and has a background advancing wide-reaching student initiatives. And I emphasize this, while completing her MBA, let me say that again, while she was completing her MBA, she was the manager of grants administration and grantee supports at Taking It Global, which is an organization that is around youth around the world, actively engaging and connecting and shaping a more inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world. And again, while she was doing her MBA. At the same time, while completing her MBA, she also ran a close second as the Manitoba Liberal candidate for MLA in Fort Richmond. If she had won, she would have been the youngest MLA in Manitoba history. Tanjit, I look forward to supporting you as you continue to conserve our community. And to be quite blunt about it, Tanjit, I'm looking forward to my future as being your valet. I'll carry your bags as you move forward with your career. I have a question for you, Tanjit. As a member of this conversation with the most recent hands-on experiences with the University of Manitoba, including the completion of your MBA, how have your experiences with research and practice at the U of M served as a launching pad for you for your incredible future? And if so, what would you love to see improved academically and culturally for students that will follow your lead?
Thank you for the question. And I've been in awe just hearing the other speakers before, and I was taking notes. I was like, oh, I have to talk about this as well. But I appreciate the introduction as well. And yeah, I think, just speaking about my recent experience, the MBA program is so unique in relation to the other graduate programs. And it's really one that really lets you interact with professionals across Manitoba. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about the program, is actually hearing from business professionals, leaders across our province, and having that opportunity to learn from them, hear about their experiences. I thought was so important. I enjoyed that definitely more than taking corporate finance and accounting, which are not my strengths. So that's for sure. So I think the biggest thing is networking, being able to meet people. Some of the fantastic individuals I met in the MBA program. Some that were local from Manitoba, many engineers working in the business field, a few with arts backgrounds like myself, but also a very large population from international communities, especially India and China. I think I remember my orientation, and the local domestic students were outnumbered, and I thought this was great, just seeing the amount of students that moved to Winnipeg to attend the University of Manitoba, but in general are moving to Manitoba and calling this their home and building a life here for their families, the next generation, I think is so incredible. And we, I know Markus and others touch up on the importance of supporting those students. I think in terms of how we can improve, a couple things is building that community. In my time as president of the Students' Union, I saw culture being built on campus the most by international students, because as Markus spoke about, they don't necessarily have a family here. They're building that community. They're building friendships that will last them a lifetime. And I saw them, actively engaged on campus, there after hours, having various events. Whereas, a lot of domestic students like myself, I see it more as you come in for class and you go home after, and it does have that commuter atmosphere. I think another opportunity that the university has is with the Southwood lands, the old golf area that they procured, and how that's developed, and how that hopefully will also add to that community atmosphere that I hope to see the university build. I think it is an area of opportunity. So that's one part of it. Another part is looking at the job market as well. Now, like like, the jobs I see, many of them require some sort of university or post-secondary degree of some sort, whether folks are getting a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. The only issues with those degrees is like, it's not like getting a law degree where, you're a lawyer and there's a market out there of job opportunities. When you have an arts degree or a science degree with various majors or courses that you have to take to achieve them, there's not really, at the end of the tunnel, there's not really like a job there for you. You really have to think about, what have I learned and how can I apply those? What are my interests? And I think the biggest thing that I think the university, and this is something I advocated for and continue to advocate for as a former student, is how we can ensure that in addition to just receiving the education and learning from experts and understanding the research and being able to do it on your own, understanding what have you really learned and how can you market yourself in the job market and ensure that you can find employment afterwards. So I think that's a big part of it as well. So ensuring that those opportunities are there, whether that looks like from learning from a fantastic alumni that we have, or if it's a matter of, ensuring that there is some sort of career services element to ensure that, our grads are working in the field that they receive their education in. So I think that's another part of it as well. And, in terms of looking at the university and in terms of the research side of things, also considering the University of Manitoba right now is in a very interesting position. There is a provincial government that also, I think, is advocating for more of those supports towards the employment opportunities and towards those professional programs that have employment opportunities lined up for their students afterwards. But, we need to also consider that the University of Manitoba is a part of the U15 research intensive universities across Canada. And that also has a bit of a status that needs to be maintained. And a part of that is producing research. And in order to produce research, you need folks that are professionals in their fields. A part of the stress that comes with that is being able to pay researchers what they're worth. And there is a bit of a disconnect in terms of what researchers can get paid in our province. And oftentimes being in various meetings throughout my involvement with the University of Manitoba, I've heard that often the University of Manitoba is almost like a breeding ground for the top researchers, because we have the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation. We have all these fantastic research institutes. They come here, but then, they might get recruited by another institution because they're getting offered more money or different benefits, and it might be more suitable for them and their families. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect there, and I think in those cases the University of Manitoba, is a little disadvantaged. And I think there's a lot of work and advocacy to happen there to ensure we're continuously putting investment into research opportunities and maintaining that research excellence, which is of course a pillar of the strategic plan. So many areas of opportunities. I think it's a really unique time for the university and for students. And I think the biggest thing is just understanding the importance of having post-secondary education in our community and in our economy, and the importance of what that does for a young person like myself and the opportunities that comes along with it.
Paul and Markus and Rebecca, I told you that this young person is really sharp. And you kind of summarized what Paul had to say, what Markus had to say, and Rebecca had to say, is that the experiences at the University of Manitoba have been great. They've been a launching pad, but it's not enough. And our university can become even better as we move forward into the future. But it needs heavy lifting. We actually need to put action into our words to move forward, and we can all be part of that movement. Tanjit, your favorite memories of the University of Manitoba?
I was asked this question, funny enough, at a Board of Governors retreat when I was there. I remember was my second term or second year on the Board of Governors, and there was a provincial government change, and all of the government appointed board members were, I guess, kind of, their terms ended, for lack of better words, and a brand new slate of members came on board. So I was literally one of the oldest standing board members all of a sudden. I was like, oh, I'm still figuring out how this all works. So we had a retreat, and I was asked the question at the time. I remember my favorite memory was definitely through all the student association and student involvement I had the privilege of being a part of, and particularly it was when I was found out the evening I was elected as the president of the Art Student Body Council. I remember it was a very contentious time, and I wasn't planning on putting my name forward, and a friend of mine, who was the AMSU president at the time, said, no, you need to do it, like, and get together a slate of people that'll be on your team. And I remember they had something crazy, like 17 elected positions at the time. Within like a week and a half, I convinced 16 other people to be on a team with me and to support me as president. And we got 15 or so of them elected. And yeah, it was pretty crazy what we pulled off. And I remember finding out that night, because you know, at the time that seemed like the biggest stress in the world. Obviously, you know, in perspective, it wasn't. But I remember, you know, that night I got a call from the outgoing AMSU president, and he's like, congratulations, you're going to be the next AMSU president after this. And I said, I just got elected to this. Like, you know, that's a year away. I got to figure out like how I can help art students now, you know? So, you know, I think it's definitely my memories. Just, it was just getting involved on campus. It wasn't my plan going in. I thought I was going to go down a different route, but by being able to get involved, meet new people, it really opened the door to so many other opportunities, and really led to a lot of what I do today, and a lot of the public service and volunteerism I do. And I'm so grateful for you know, the people I've met along the way, and the opportunities that I've had the privilege of holding. So yeah, my favorite memory is definitely being involved on campus.
Fantastic. Paul, Markus, and Rebecca, any last words before I hand it over to Tanji to wrap us up?
Well, I just want to wish you the very best. I know that you'll be successful in this endeavor once elected. I'm putting all my eggs in your basket. So I look forward to working with you once you are elected on the board. University of Manitoba is proudly in the ward of St. Norbert, St. River. And so I do have an ongoing relationship with the intergovernmental affairs coordinator there, and look forward to continuing a great collaboration with the University of Manitoba and the city of Winnipeg.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you, brother.
Duane, I'll second Marcus's motion. I think the U of M would be really lucky to have you on the board. And you know, what's really cool, all of you that have been involved in those elections, you're doing it because you want to, not because you have to. And when your heart's in it and your head's in it, and you bring a whole bunch of experience, and in your case, you know how to play on a team, you know, pretty exciting times in the future for U of M. So wish you best of luck.
Thank you, Paul. And Tanjit, you can wrap us up.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our speakers today, to Duane for bringing us all together, and to those who tune in, you know, to the video online later. Thanks for tuning in. So before we sign off, just a little housekeeping. Just a reminder to those, if you haven't voted yet, please do, and tell your friends. So voting is super simple. I'm going to share my screen and show you right now how simple it is. All you have to do is go on to the link. I can send it to you in the chat afterwards. But if you just go onto the site, click vote now. All you have to do is click next to Duane Brothers there. Make sure you select his name. And go down. You have to put in a little bit of your information, your first, last name, any previous names. On April 14th, you would have gotten an email from the University of Manitoba, and they sent you an alumni ID. If you know what it is, please put that in. If you don't, it's okay. They will verify your vote, your email address, and then just share which degrees and which years you graduated, one, or if there's more than one, feel free. And then please make sure you click submit. After you click submit, you should receive a confirmation email. If you don't get it, please revisit the site again just to make sure your vote went through. And please tell as many people as you can before Friday, 4 p.m. Central Time. And let's get Duane Brothers elected to the Board of Governors at the University of Manitoba. That's all for me. Thank you so much, everyone. And have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye, everyone. Thank you.